to this meeting of the Combined Authorities Skills Committee. It's very good to see everyone here this morning. I'm aware that Councillor Wilson is not with us yet. I don't think we've had apologies from her, so with a bit of luck she will arrive in a minute. She may be struggling to find us, or she may turn up in any minute without having struggled at all, but I think we'll make a start anyway. And I'm sure if she does arrive, here she is now. Fantastic. That's good news. She's on the way. I can see her coming in a very long way away. First, I'd like to start by welcoming those members of the press and public who have joined us today in Peterborough, and also those who are watching the meeting on our live stream. The Combined Authority allows filming and photography at its public meetings, so please feel free to take pictures and tweet during the meeting. Can I ask, though, that everyone present turns their mobile phone to silent or vibrate while the meeting is taking place? There are no fire drills scheduled for today, so if the alarm sounds, I will adjourn the meeting and we will move to the muster point adjacent to the multi-storey car park. And I would like to remind members and officers that the meeting will be recorded. So it's very good to see everyone here. I think the first item on our agenda is the apologies for absence and declarations of interest. I think we have everyone present now, because I think Eileen will be here in a moment. Lynn Ayres is here, which is very good. And Councillor Mason, I believe you're subbing for Chris Seaton from Fenland. So welcome. It's very good to have you with us.
Chair, we have a late apologies from Councillor Sweeney. No substitute.
Okay, thank you very much. So that's the first item on the agenda. Sorry, I'm just looking at this. I think the next item is to welcome Chief Executive Eileen Milner, who is joining the meeting on Zoom. I'm not sure whether she is actually, but anyway, it's fine. If she arrives, we'll welcome her. It'd be very nice to see her. The next item is does any member wish to declare a disclosable pecuniary interest or non-statutory disclosable interest for any of the items being considered today? Liz. It's the one with the person speaking.
Not pushing hard enough, thank you very much. It's just that I'm a member of the Health and Social Care Academy steering group, and therefore I think I need to declare that, but I would still like to take part in the debate and the voting. Okay.
Absolutely, thank you. I think it's not a disclosable or non-statutory interest, but it's nice to know anyway. That's fine, there's no harm in declaring it beforehand. Declarations. Oh, Lynn.
Probably I should do the same thing then, because I went on the working group the other day, because I deal with City College. It's within my portfolio.
That's great, thank you. If anyone does suddenly discover they have an interest that they need to declare, you can also declare it at any point during the meeting, so that's fine. I think the next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes and the action log. So are there any comments or questions on those? Lynn?
Thank you. I just wanted to make a comment about. I'm not doubting that the minute is correct. Please understand that. On 44. No, where am I? Yes, hang on. Just a minute. It is on page 8. I think. No, page 11. Got it. On the fourth bullet point down, I think that I know that Pat Carrington, who runs the City College, is coming in on the academy when that is coming into this meeting, and she's going to be saying things about what was said by the director at the time about City College Peterborough. I just wanted to mention that. I'm not saying that wasn't said at the meeting, but she has got different things to say about it, and I wanted to make that point. If you could wait and hear that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I don't think that needs a correction in the minutes, but it will be good to know that later. Thank you. Are there any other comments on the minutes or the action log? checking the action log whether there's anything we need to update on. Fliss, on the employment and skills strategy, is that coming up later in the agenda? I think it probably is.
It's not on this meeting, but it will come to the next skills committee meeting.
Okay, thank you. Any further comments on the action log? Okay, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, and I'll sign the minutes in a moment. Oh, actually, I should have gone to Parminder to take us through the action log, but I think we've covered it. I think it's fine, unless anybody's got any further comments. That's fine. Good. Let's move on to part 2, reports to the combined authority. The first on that section of the agenda is the adult education budget. So this time I will come to Parminder to talk us through this report. So Parminder is on Zoom, and if you're ready to speak, Parminder, that would be great. I can see you, so I hope other people can too.
Good morning to the members. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes, we can hear you fine. So do feel free to introduce the report.
That's great. Thank you, Chair. So as part of its devolution agreement, the Combined Authority receives circa 12 million from the adult education budget for the provision of adult education to residents in the sub-region. And this report sets out our approach to making funding allocations to our colleges, local authorities and adult learning institutes, who as anchor civic institutions in their communities are funded by a recurrent grant. In line with our published business cycle, the report sets out our approach for the 2022-23 academic year. Allocations to the grant providers are set out in the report in Table A. In addition, the Combined Authority has been delegated funding from the National Skills Fund of just under £1 million, circa 995,000, for the delivery of Level 3 courses as part of the government's Lifetime Skills Guarantee for the 2022-23 academic year as well. To note that for those courses from the Department of Education's prescribed list are only eligible for funding under this funding stream. And National Skills Fund allocations for Level 3 courses to the grant-funded colleges and adult learning institutes are also included in Table A. Paragraph 2.1 of the report highlights the funding that we have for the 2022-23 academic year from these funding lines, which equates to a budget of 15 million, which also includes recycled funds from previous academic years. Members will note that the good news here is that unspent AEB is now retained in the sub-region for redistribution for the benefit of more of our citizens rather than going back to Treasury. Independent training providers in the private and third sector are not part of this granting process, but they will have the opportunity to apply for a contract through our procurement process, which launches this week. The report also highlights the policy changes under the devolve system and how we have widened opportunities and access to adult learning and skills by providing funding flexibilities. All of these flexibilities have been co-produced with our partners through various engagement events, open public consultation, which I trust members have also been able to respond to. So from 2022-23, I'll just very briefly take you through some of these funding flexibilities that we're looking to implement. Is in addition to the flexibilities that we already have, which are set out in the report, is to implement further second level 3 flexibilities that respond to local employer need and or enable in-work progression or access to higher education. Secondly, to improve the ESOL offer, English for speakers of other languages, by allowing providers to deliver in the workplace. Thirdly, to better define community learning in order to improve the targeting of citizens and to enrich the offer with regards to the wider outcomes of learning, such as health and well-being. Fourthly, to increase the low wage scheme. Currently, we've got it set at 20,000 to increase it up to 21,000 before fees become payable. And then the next one is the issue to do with FE teacher training, and to try and build capacity by funding teacher training for FE at level 5. And the next one is to do with the green awareness as part of the commission that was held around wider citizen education around carbon literacy, and to fund carbon literacy courses to improve that general public awareness of environmental sustainability issues, and to encourage our citizens to look at their behaviour and their choices, and to enable them to make informed choices in terms of the environment. The next one is to do with bespoke employer programs, and provide greater flexibility that could include modules rather than full qualifications, and also licenses to practice. And then the final two are to do with vulnerable cohorts. The first one is to expand the package that we have for care leavers, aged 19 to 22. And secondly, we are consulting on supporting our armed forces communities and their families, and to look at support for that community as well. So our policy intention with all of these changes is to enable our providers to target training courses to low-skilled, low-waged and unemployed residents, to increase their participation in the labour market. And this is in alignment with our employment and skills strategy to deeply tackle the inequalities that exist in the labour market and reduce skills deficits, and to enable more of our citizens to access local jobs and improve the quality of life and the availability of a skilled workforce for our employers. Finally, just to say that we will be reviewing our funding policies as part of the planned AEB independent evaluation for the third year of devolution, and this will be an impact evaluation looking over 3 years. So thank you to members, and happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Parminder. I'm going to go to Councillor Niche first. John. Can I just say one thing before you start? In fact, I'm not sure what the name of the gentleman who's joined us is, and I probably should know. I'm not sure what your name is. I wondered whether you would like to sit the other side, because then you can see the screen that's behind you. You've got one there. That's great. Perfect. That answered my question. Thank you.
Right, for clarity, I'm Councillor Alex Muscandlin
from the Scrutiny Committee.
And Deputy ONS from Fenland District Council.
Thanks so much. That's really helpful. Sorry, I wanted to make sure you could see the screen, and I'm glad that you can. That's great. John.
Thank you very much, Lucy. Yeah, it's just an omission, although I had marked it, is that I'm actually one of the Armed Forces Covenant board members. So I just realised I'd marked it down here to say, and then forgot right at the beginning. So it's just that. And just on one of the points is I'm quite pleased. I was scratching my head a little bit on the carbon literacy courses, but I think it's actually, he explained it well, and it actually also in item 7 it also gives a bit more, 7.1, it actually gives a bit more insight into that aspect as well. So apologies for not declaring an interest in the first place.
It's no problem. Liz.
I didn't declare it either. I'm on the Armed Covenant board, so my apologies for that. And just wanted to, through the chair, to say thank you to Parminder for looking at that, and of course expanding the support packages for the care leavers. That's great. There's just a couple of things that I just wanted to ask. Obviously, you've done a survey which is coming after the additional courses and suggestions that you've made, and that I understand, because that's a place-based approach, isn't it, to need identification. And presumably we'll get the results of that fairly soon. So our own areas should have actually contributed to that. But what I wanted to say is, just one other thing. I'm assuming that access courses to university, which are level 3, are not funded. You come back to all that. So that's just an issue that I wanted to raise. But again, we're looking at supply rather than demand. And I just, when we go to the last paragraph on that, we're enabling providers to target training courses to low-skilled and low-waged, etc. But these are the hard-to-reach groups, and we've had difficulty reaching them in the past. And I'm wondering what was going to happen differently to create the demand for the courses which are perfect. So it's really, really good. But unless we've got uptake, then we will be in the same situation as we were before, which is why we've got the underspend in the first place.
Parminder, do you want to respond to those points?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Every, for that question about the access courses. And just to confirm that we do fund access courses through AEB. It's subject to the eligibility criteria around wage thresholds, but we do, and we also so individuals, if they're eligible, they get fully funded through AEB. If they're not eligible, they can still do access courses through the advanced learner loans. So that provision is there. And then the second question, I think it was more of a comment, actually, in terms of how the system all works together. And I wonder whether this is if you think about the strategy, it's all about system leadership and how the education skills system all works together in terms of balancing the demand and the supply. So I think it's about the relationships. It's about how we use our devolved powers to address any of the unintended consequences of the system. So I think it's about how we work together in partnership with the districts, with the DWP, with GrowthWorks for Skills, and with our employers in order to achieve that balance between the supply and the demand. But also to note as well, of course, is that our providers also do a lot of employer engagement, and they also do community engagement. And again, they have a key role in terms of bringing this all together.
Thank you. Eileen, did you have a comment?
Is that right?
That's right.
Sure. I've got two questions really. The first one is there were some proposals a while back from the government that employers, the choice of providers would be passed to employers rather than combined authority. And we wrote a letter was written to the government. Have we heard anything back about that, or have those proposals fallen by the wayside? My second point was some time ago we discussed having a paper on green jobs, and that doesn't seem to be on the forward agenda plan. And I see that there's an allusion to it in here in the proposals. And is that where any proposals on green jobs are going to be included in the various projects rather than one overall green jobs paper?
Parminder, are you happy to do the first part of that? If you can do the second as well, that would be great, but if not, I'll come to Fliss.
Yeah, I was going to say that Fliss might want to contribute to the response for this, but I'm assuming Councillor Wilson's talking about LSIPs, local skills improvement plans, in terms of the first question around employers directing and determining local skills investment. And if that's what Councillor Wilson was suggesting, that is still going ahead. The skills bill is still passing through Parliament. Still in terms of and there are a number of areas that are involved with piloting it through Trailblazers. In terms of our local arrangements, I think Fliss might want to just provide some more information on that bit. And then in terms of the green skills, we are bringing up we are doing some work in the background in terms of the analysis around future needs around green jobs, and there is work underway in terms of curriculum development, and also supply chain development through the Southeast Energy Hub. And there is also as part of the procurement process, there is a tender that will be going out for retrofit skills. And there is a paper that is on the forward at the action plan for Gilgy, and we expect it will be through that process. So, Fliss, is there anything more that you'd like to add to what I've said?
Yeah, I will do. Parminder, we lost you at the end of that. So to carry on with the green jobs. So you'll be very aware that we're developing the action plan and implementation plan for the employment and skills strategy. One of those work streams will all be about green jobs and green skills, and so therefore we will bring that back to you as part of an update on where we are, and I hope that's sufficient for you. As you probably would have heard from what Parminder was saying, we are also in the process of commissioning some scoping work with the Energy Hub, and so that's currently underway. So although the paper's not as a separate item, we are very much on with making sure that we meet the requirements to bring that back to the committee. In relation to the LSIPs, so the local skills improvement plans, so as Parminder said, that's currently going through the Houses of Parliament at the moment. One thing that is very positive is the fact that now LSIPs will have to pay, and I can't remember the exact words, but it might be due regard to combined authorities, and so therefore the Secretary of State is very clear that he sees a role for combined authorities in the development of the LSIPs, and so we're in a lot better position than where we were previously. We currently have our skills advisory panel. The funding for that ends at the end of this month, and we're still waiting to hear from the Department for Education as to whether or not that will be extended for another year, or whether or not we should see the implementation of local skills improvement plans across the whole of the country this year. So there needs to be some decisions made, but we're still awaiting. As soon as we have an update, we will inform you as what the situation will be for the next 12 months.
Thank you. Great, thank you. Lynn.
Thank you very much. I wonder, Parminder, if I could ask about the underspend, this £2 million underspend, and I mean, in other words, where did that come from? Who was it that didn't actually carry through the money that had been allotted to them, and also why it wasn't reallocated within the year? I mean, I'm not sure whether you do that, so this is why I'm asking, because I think reallocation within the year to people who had probably already spent all their requirements and needed more, if you let them know about it, or how do you go about the underspend within the year rather than move it forward into the next year?
Parminder, I'm slightly worried he's frozen.
This will be can you hear me?
Not brilliantly. I'm just wondering whether we might hear you better if you turned your camera off, Parminder. Could we try that for a minute, because it was cutting out a bit at the end. Let's see if we can hear you now.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, so I might have to move to another room, but I'll do my best to answer that. So members will be aware that every meeting that we have been reporting on underspend. So it's not a surprise. If you track back all the papers, you can see that we've been talking about it. So some of it, so this underspend is an accumulation of funds. Not all of it is underspend. Some of it is money that is being recycled. And it's for the 3 years that we've had evolved AEB. So it's and it is as you would expect us to do under a devolved system, is where funds across all of the providers is not being spent, is being brought back into the system and then being redistributed. And there was a paper that came to Skills Committee in September that set out the approach and did get approval for carry forward of funding into the next commissioning round. that's the sort of the backstory. And the other bit of it is to do with the pandemic, when colleges and providers were closed. So in the 2019-20 academic year, and also 2020-21 academic year, there as per the national situation with all adult education providers, that there was underspend. So it's an accumulation of funds, and then the other bit of it, the other third dimension of it is, some of it is also to do with the combined authority in the first 2 years, is that we did not contract all of the available funds, that we did hold money back. And the reason we did that was to support any economic shocks or local issues. So for instance, with the HGV driver situation, we were able to use some of the underspend to commission at pace. And if we had allocated all the funding out, we wouldn't have been able to do that. And members will always also recall from previous meetings that we did introduce the light touch procurement process and bring in new providers as well, to replace providers who we lost. So we have lost some providers as well, as part of the provider marketplace. So and then in terms of previously, the funding would have just gone, been absorbed into the system. So it's actually good that we're able to utilise it in this way. And then the second bit of your question, Councillor Ayres, was to do with was what's our in-year process for working with providers to monitor performance, and where providers are able to increase capacity to redistribute funding in year. And just to confirm that we definitely do that. So, and we do it both ways. So where providers we feel are not going to hit their allocation or their target, we do hold payments or reduce contracts in year as well. But we also do in-year growth cases. So to give you an example of that, we've just run a round of in-year growth cases in January, and just under $500,000 is going out through in-year growth as well. So I think we definitely have the processes in order to monitor performance in year. We do that through our quarterly performance monitoring process. We also have monthly data coming in from providers, but we have to be cognizant of, if you like, when devolution first came and the combined authority was putting the underpinning processes in place, it was looking to shrink the marketplace of providers in order to be able to better coordinate and manage the process. Now, 3 years down the line, I think we're in a much stronger position in terms of having the relationships, having the underpinning monitoring and performance management and business cycle in place. So moving forward, I think I'm very optimistic in terms of our existing providers, but also new providers coming in through our commissioning cycle, and we will be able to manage this whole budget situation a lot better, because the end game for us is to try and increase our share of the national pot, and try and get a better settlement for government. And the only way we're going to do that is through demonstrating the impact and efficacy of devolution in the region, and also influencing the funding methodology moving forward. So I hope that provides some context in terms of the past, but also moving forward, how we're in a much stronger position than where we were.
Thank you very much for that, Parminder. And I think the increasing the share of the national pot is probably a particularly good idea of yours. And so I'm all for that. Chair, if you wouldn't mind if I asked another question on the funding side as well. I'm just wondering, when you actually do you go out looking for new people who will cover sort of more specialist areas as well? Or is it, in other words, I mean, I don't know, in different areas which everybody represents, I can imagine they're sort of like agriculture and farming for the gentleman on my right, and I just wondered whether you actually do try and give more money for different areas that need to be covered as well. And moving on to thinking of the care, I was delighted to see that you were doing bursaries for care leavers, etc., which I think is terribly important. But and the Armed Forces Covenant as well, equally very important, but just wanting to make sure there's no duplication there, because I do think that the Armed Forces do help people who are leaving the Armed Forces, and I just wanted to make sure there weren't two pots going, as it were, that weren't necessary, because we have lots and lots of areas that we do need to cover, like mental health, and as I've just said, probably even other areas that people can think of. So, sorry if that's a bit of a wander, but if you wouldn't mind answering some of those points for me. Thank you.
Yeah, so just making sure that I heard it correctly. The first point was about how do we work with providers in order to plan provision to ensure that we don't have duplication. And the second question was to do with care leavers, which I will answer because I've got some figures I'd like to share with the board. And then the third one was about armed forces. So the first question is in terms of the planning process with providers. Given the geography of the region, absolutely there is once the allocations have been agreed with the grant funded providers, is we enter into the planning process, and part of that is to look at that aggregate picture of what's being delivered, but also being cognizant of travel and making sure that we have good coverage of local provision. And then in terms of gaps in provision, we are commissioning the independent training providers under specific lots, and it's provision which adds value to our grant providers. So the best way of thinking about it is the grant providers provide like a universal offering because they are anchor civic institutions, and then the independent training providers provide some of the gaps and also some of the niche provision. But some of our grant providers also have specialisms as well. So an example of this is College of West Anglia has its land-based provision as an example of that. So within the overall mix and balance of provision, there is definitely a process whereby we look at duplication. And in fact, one of the issues I think is about I think we need more provision rather than less. Actually, in certain areas, and members will be aware we did bring some initial cold spot analysis to look at that. So and the second question was about the support for care leavers, and just to say that we're absolutely delighted with the scheme that we've launched, and we've been the only combined authority, the only place in England that's providing this kind of support to 19 to 22-year-olds. 16 to 18-year-olds get support already, but the 19 to 22-year-olds were a forgotten cohort. In the first year of the bursary, which is this academic year, over 60 young people have been supported. So as the academic year ends, we'll be able to bring some case studies and other data in terms of that support. So we're delighted with the first year, and through next year's Flexibilities, looking at additional support that we can provide. And then about the armed forces, we're definitely not looking to duplicate the support that is already there, absolutely not, but rather, again, going back to the point about system leadership, how do we work with the other parts of the system, such as the DWP, such as the MOD, that do have programs of support for veterans and armed forces. But within that landscape, there are definitely gaps in provision, and there's also opportunities for the system to collaborate and work better together. And that's one of the reasons why we're consulting on it, to really understand where the gaps are, working with the two armed forces covenant boards, crystallising the Combined Authorities pledge as well under the Armed Forces Covenant to come up with the offer.
Thank you very much for that.
Thank
In
you.
particular about the care leavers.
Thank you very much. I don't see any other hands. Did you want to... At the bottom of the thing there's a...
Right, yeah. I'm just wondering whether there were any original providers that were refused funding that could be now revisited in view of the underspend. Parminder, perhaps you could answer that one, please.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, that we are going out to tender for new providers, and we're looking to double the provider market that we have. So there's definitely an opportunity, and as soon as the advert goes live, we will make sure we circulate that to members, and members can circulate that to any providers that they're aware of within the local areas.
Yeah, thank you for that. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see any further hands, and I think we've had a good discussion on this item. So if members are happy, we'll move to the recommendations on this one. The recommendations are on the paper, so I won't read them out. Could I have a proposer and a seconder for these recommendations? Thank you, John and Eileen. So John to propose and Eileen to second, if that's okay. There does seem to be general support for these proposals. I don't see anybody against, so if that's correct, we'll take them as accepted and move on to item 2 on the agenda. Is it item 2? It probably isn't, actually. Anyway, it's the Skills and Labour Market Insights report. And this is being presented by Parminder again and also Rachel Hallam. Parminder, are you okay to carry on? We do seem to have sound fine with the camera off. I'm happy to try it with it on again, but if it goes odd, we'll tell you if that's okay. So handing over to you again. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm just going to do a very, very quick intro because Rachel will talk us through. So just to say that we are aware that we have been providing a lot of information and insight and analysis and data to the committee. And at a previous meeting, it was suggested that it would be good to have what I call a ready reckoner with some high-level headline data that members can have, and to provide this twice a year. So this paper just sets out a proposal for developing this, and an example that Cambridgeshire Insights and Rachel have developed. So it's just to share that with you. And in addition to that, there was a different type of report that also went to the business board, which was also sent out. And just for transparency purposes, just to share that as well. But also being cognizant of feedback that some members have expressed, and for us to be very mindful of not overloading members with far too much data and copious analysis, to really try and to refine what we share. So this is an attempt to provide that ready reckoner, as I call it, and now I will hand over to Rachel.
Good morning, Chair and members of the Skills Committee. Parminder has just asked me to speak very briefly today about the Labour Market Information Report, Appendix 1, that the Cambridgeshire County Council research team have produced. This appendix pulls together an amalgamation of work and data that was brought together during the pandemic for not only the Combined Authority but other local partners, and we undertook this on a monthly basis to ensure that all local partners had timely information that was kind of open and shareable. As is highlighted in the report, this was for consistency, but also aimed to create efficiencies locally as well. This evolved over the pandemic, as you might expect, when more data was released. And what I've presented to you today is a condensed headline of all of that work. The aim is to give you an overview of what local information is available, and also just to show you what the focus and what data is being put under the spotlight locally. Parminder has also asked me to highlight to you the key messages, and for me, the key points or messages to draw out, and just to say this mirrors what I presented to the Employment and Skills Board recently as well, are four main things. Although the numbers and percentages on the support scheme may seem high, the area showed strength through the pandemic in less reliance on support schemes, and this was in particular due to the strength of our sectors locally, and that should be acknowledged. Early signs in the claimant count numbers show continued decreases, not the increases after the support schemes we may have feared when furlough came to an end. But we do need to look and continue to keep looking closely at Peterborough and Fenland. These areas have seen increases in their rates, which has the potential of widening that gap further that we've been seeing locally. We need to continue the monitoring of data of our young people. The evidence shows in the data that they were most impacted in the labour market during the pandemic. The most recent data is showing some signs of that recovery and that gap narrowing, but the education data always lags, and therefore our suggestion is to continue to keep monitoring if we see some of that inactivity transition across to education. And then just lastly, there were 12,100 employments on furlough at the end of September, and that's quite a significant number still, and shouldn't just be kind of forgotten. And the key question is, where are those people now? We can see from the data that there is a match between redundancies and those who ended up on furlough. And so we want to continue the analysis through the vacancy data that we can look at and scrutinise to how we can understand that alignment between those who were furloughed, potentially made redundant, and now the increase in vacancies we're seeing locally. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rachel. I think the report's really interesting, personally. So I don't know if there are other comments. Lynn and then John.
Thank you. I thought that this data was very good and was easier to read somehow rather than lengthy commentary. So thank you very much for it. And I was particularly interested in the vacancy data, which says it's 58%, I think, is an increase in unique job postings compared to pre-COVID. I suspect that some of that is going to be in Peterborough, which is where I'm particularly interested in. But when we see that sort of data, and we see that there has been a rise in claimant numbers as well, do we look? Probably Parminder needs to answer this. I'm sorry, but it may be him. Do we actually look to see where we want the training? Because obviously, if the jobs are vacant, but we're still having claimants, rising claimants, that doesn't match up very well. So, can somebody tell me what we do when we, in other words, using this data to make sure we need to train people in?
Are you happy to reply? Does that fit within Rachel's area or not really? Maybe it doesn't actually. Fliss, do you want to pick that up?
I'm happy to take that unless Rachel or Parminder want to join in. So it's quite complex. Surprise, surprise, I'm going to say that. So therefore, we do look at where job postings are by sector and by type of job. So we have quite informed LMI now. There is always a lag, though, between current vacancies and how long it takes to train people, which is why the schemes such as the Bootcamps, which we'll have a paper out, is very useful, because the main aim is to get people trained up and quickly into employment. But we do use the LMI to inform where the supply of training is. We have found that a number of people who are claiming benefits at this time have significant additional needs, and so therefore being able to move them into higher level, higher skilled jobs and also into employment is trickier than just being able to have vacancies. And so we're finding that a number of our residents are needing additional support to go into those vacancies.
Can I ask what we do about that? Can we work on that sort of quickly or not quickly?
So
there at the moment, of course, coming out of COVID, or we hope we're coming out of COVID, these needs are going to get greater, aren't they? And with furlough having stopped.
Yeah. Are you okay for me to answer? So there is a scheme. So we have a number of different options, as you'd expect me to say. So we have some ESF, so European Social Fund funded projects that work with those people with most complex needs. We also have the National DWP Restart Scheme, and that is specifically targeting long-term unemployed. Originally we were looking at 18 months. Now I believe that's come down to 9 months. So people who are furthest from the labour market, there are intensive schemes that are there to help support people into work.
Thank you. John.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's really useful. I know in Huntingdonshire we've been utilising the more detailed reports that are behind it, but I think this for us gives some really good oversight of information. And I think it particularly highlights, as has already been pointed out, the youth sector, which is vitally important. And also I think when you look at the wholesale and retail sector there, and it links into retraining, doesn't it? There's a lot of things that are happening that have changed and will change. Still early days to understand exactly what that impact is going to be, but I think it's really useful data, and thank you very much. I think, and as Lynn has said, we need to keep an eye on how that is moving, which is a very difficult one because it's still a moving target at the moment.
Quite agree. Thank you. Eileen, and then Liz.
Thank you. This might be early days for this, but I've been looking at the government proposals for Ukrainian refugees, and they're going to be allowed to work and claim benefits. So is anything happening now to actually prepare for that, or is the combined authority waiting for more information coming from the government? Because some of them might need language training, and if they want to work in their normal professions. So I just wonder if any thought is being given to this at all.
It is certainly something that we are looking at. Parminder, do you want to come in here with anything specific?
Yes, thank you for that question, Councillor Wilson. That's quite pertinent right now. There is work going on with the Strategic Migration Partnership for the East of England that we work very closely with around planning our ESOL and wider offer for newly arrived communities. But at this point in time, other than LGA guidance and some of the information that's come out from government about the people housing, Ukrainian newly arrived, there hasn't been any further guidance that's been provided to us. So we are working with the Strategic Migration Partnership to come up with what the offer is going to be, and we also don't know what the numbers are so far. So, but yes, it's definitely something that's that we're committed to working on, and making sure that we've got the right offer from a upskilling an English language perspective for those communities.
Thank you.
Thank you. Liz?
Just a practical question, I suppose. I absolutely agree with John. We take this religiously, take it around, and the documents we've had before have been really, really useful because the detail actually has been very useful. But I just wondered, this is excellent. I think this is a great move forward for us. It makes life easier for us to get those headline figures. What exactly, how do you distribute this information? Because we're aware that you now meet regularly with our economic development departments, which is really good. Is there a feed that's coming through that we can add to? Otherwise, I rather feel that we're feeding it in. I'm not sure whether that's right or not. But this information is so visible and so important that I just wondered how they access that, and how wide is the distribution?
Are you okay?
Yeah. I could go back to Rachel. I think Cambridgeshire Insight have this updated on their website all the time, and therefore it is available to everybody all the time. But Rachel, tell me if I'm wrong about that.
So Fliss and Parminder might want to come in as well, but yes, we update from our website, Cambridgeshire Insight. We post it on there. We share with partners. The Combined Authority also have their own LMI page, which I believe the monthly updates go on to as well.
Yeah, so there is, sorry, I'm okay, come in. So as part of the work that we're doing with careers, we do have an LMI website which is for learners and for leaders, and so on a quarterly basis that website is updated with information both which is digestible for our young people but also for leaders too, and so therefore it's cut in two different ways. So I will share that link with everybody if you're not aware of it, so you can have access to it, and Rachel's team feed into that website too.
Thank you. Lots of ways it's being shared. That's helpful. I've got one comment to make on that. I mean, so I also think the data is really helpful. I think it's a very clear way that it's presented, which is excellent. The bit that sort of stood out for me actually was the apprenticeship data, and we are still 30% down on where we were in 2019-20, which is a huge drop. I know that the Combined Authority doesn't have a huge amount of capacity to influence that, but I do think it's something that we all need to be aware of and try and think about how we can support FE colleges and businesses to increase the number of apprenticeships that they're able to offer. So that was the thing that stood out for me from the data we've got. Fliss.
So I think a better news story is the bounce back for the first quarter of this academic year, and so we have bounced back almost to pre-2019 figures, but I agree with you, and we do have the contract with Growth Works with Skills where we're looking at additional 1,400 apprentice starts over the contract period. We're working very closely with partners such as the Chamber and Cambridge Ahead to continue to raise the profile and help employers understand how they can access and make use of apprenticeships. But as always, more work can be done.
Thank you. At which point I think we'll probably move on from this report. Thank you very much, Rachel. I think the data has been much welcomed, and I think we like this presentation, so thank you, that's really helpful. I think this report is just for noting, so there's no vote required, and we'll move on to the next item on the agenda. But thank you very much, everybody, for that. The next item is the Digital Skills Bootcamps, and that's Fliss.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So this paper provides an update on performance to date for the digital boot camps. In addition, we have received some good news actually about Wave 3 funding, so at the end of introducing this paper I will also inform you about that. So you'll remember that we submitted a competitive bid to deliver digital skills boot camps across the whole of the east of England. Unfortunately for us, the contract was delayed in being awarded, and so therefore our delivery window to deliver on the boot camps was significantly reduced. That said, we have seen 531 enrolments to date, and I'm afraid I don't have the final figure because there's a data lag, but we expect some additional enrolments to have started in the period from when the paper was drafted. We won't hit all of the contract, we won't, but we won't be far short from it. We have learnt a lot through the contract. You'll see that we had to submit a change control notice to the Department for Education. Unfortunately, Cambridge Regional College were not able to deliver on their allocation, and so therefore we introduced one of our AEB partners at quite a late stage in the contract to deliver, and they have performed very well. So we're getting there, but we won't hit all of the 800 learners. You'll also note, and this committee did write to the Department for Education to look for some flexibilities, and we have been successful with that request, and so therefore learners were able to start in March, and as long as they and their completion will carry on past the end of March, which originally we were told all funding had to be spent by the end of March. So that's Wave 2. We were asked to submit a proposal to the Department for Education for Wave 3 skills boot camps. And this is a lot more favourable. It's for the combined authority area only, so it's for Cambridgeshire and Peterborough. It's a lot wider in the subject areas as well, so therefore we are looking at construction, green, advanced manufacturing, engineering, and also accelerated routes into apprenticeships. And this proposal is grant funding. And so therefore it means that this money will be awarded to us and then we can distribute how we see best for the region. I'm delighted to say that all of our proposal, which was £4.89 million, has been awarded to us, and that will be spent over the next 12 months. So we will be joining AEB in their commissioning, in their procurement, to therefore enact this as soon as we can. So we'll be looking at extension of contracts for our existing providers. We'll be awarding grant funding to our grant providers for AEB, but also seeking to attract new providers into the area in these niche areas as well. This information is just for noting because we were informed of that prior to paper publication, but it will be going to the Combined Authority Board by general exception notice in March, so that we're able to move on this quickly. Thank you.
John.
Thank you, Chair. Really pleased with 3.7. That's congratulations with item 3.7. It's not 3.7 million, it's 4.9 nearly. That's really good. And the widening of it as well, which I think is really important. And I think with the widening, it's also looking at the widening of locations where we can actually provide this as well, because transportation is still a really difficult aspect for a number of people who would really benefit from this. And I think widening it across the whole of the area is really important to make sure we really focus in and get some of that moving. So, well done.
Absolutely. Lynn.
Thank you. I can remember commenting originally when we had these boot camps first come up, that there were only two people accepted, Purple Beard and the Regional College, and I wanted really to know what was the problem that the Regional College found because their uptake was very low indeed, and they've now had to reduce it down to 100, and you've had to get somebody else in. So can we know why that happened, for example, and when it comes to this new wave, will they be joining in that, and will other people be asked to join in as well, apart from the three people mentioned here? Because there's nobody in the Peterborough, which is the largest city in Cambridgeshire, there is nobody actually specifically in Peterborough or in Fenland, which is the north of the county, doing this. So can you that be explained to me, please?
Sure. So I'll take the second point first. Absolutely. And now that this is grant funding, it will give us the autonomy to be able to attract many providers into this. And so yes, 100%, it will make the spread, and there will be online and blended and face-to-face boot camps. But yes, we will definitely be extending the reach of the boot camps, because now it's grant funding that we're able to do that. In relation to CRC, I think it's fair to say that for colleges to be able to put on new provision at such short time scales and engage with employers in a new way is quite challenging. And so the delay in the contract award caused CRC significant problems in being able to deliver. Unfortunately, not only was there delays, they experienced sickness for their staff, and so therefore they didn't have the tutors to be able to take it forward. And as we all know, we have a significant shortage of tutors in specific areas as well. And they also found that the product that they developed was too long for what employers were looking for, and the requirements of the boot camps were to have a specific period of guided learning hours, and the employer demand was not there for that length of intervention. And so whilst the courses they developed are useful, they didn't meet the criteria of the boot camps, and so they had a number of different reasons for why they weren't successful in attracting the learners.
Sorry. You sort of stole my thunder, actually, there, because I was going to ask that question, because I was concerned when I saw these figures, and I think it does show, and it'll be interesting to see what the survey, the Ofsted survey, which is not going to give you judgment words or grades or identification, but that survey that Ofsted are doing, I'm assuming that's about how the whole thing was rolled out, and we will have lessons to learn from that. Does show the lack of agility, I think, that our colleges have because of what you've outlined, and while that happens, we in East Cambs and Fenland and Peterborough suffer, and I just wanted to concur with what Lynn had said, but that is really important, because that, on top of lack of transport, pushes us back even further, and particularly also the spread of marketing as well, because these subject areas I would have thought would have captured interest, really, because this is where young people are looking to go. So when we get the survey come back to us to tell us exactly what's happening, or an upgrade on this, because I appreciate all the reasons you've given for this. I'm not trying to point fingers, but the impact has had its effect, I think, locally on some of our areas.
So the Ofsted thematic survey will not name individual providers and will just provide an overview of findings. So I am more than happy to share our experiences and look at that. We will definitely be utilising the lessons learned for how we take forward the next contract, and I'll be very glad, if I'm honest, to see the end of wave 2, and I'm looking forward to wave 3. So with the new wave 3 funding, we do have to have a certain amount of starts quite early on, and so that's why we'll be looking to our existing providers to deliver those, to therefore give a longer ramp up time to our colleges to be able to make sure that they're ready to deliver.
Sorry, but I mean, if they can't provide the staffing, etc. now, they've had to go down to 100. How are they going to provide it in the future? So is my really great concern. There needs to be extra people all the way around dealing with this sort of thing across the north of the county in particular.
So they will be. CRC are not currently recruiting any more students. So the existing providers, I should clarify, would be Purplebeard and the Skills Network. We're not limiting to it, but it's so that we don't have a cliff edge. And so therefore, because we need to therefore go out to procurement, to therefore bring in new providers, and the current contract is finished, it's to provide some continuity so that there is provision. And Purplebeard and the Skills Network are fully online, so they're accessible by all. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Eileen.
Thank you. I was just wondering, is there any qualitative research being carried out on the outcomes for learners and for employers arising out of this? Because it seems to me that this should really enhance the prospects of the learners and bring benefits to the employers, and it'd be nice to be able to evaluate that.
Thank you. Very good point. Well made. So yes, as part of Ofsted, so on the wider study, then they obviously spoke to learners and to employers. So the general views will come up there, but we also survey all learners and employers too. And in addition to that, there is also the destination data as well. So therefore, we're required to find out the successes of the contract as well. So yes, thank you.
Councillor Mason.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah. Can I just ask, is there a breakdown of age groups within the learners?
I don't have it to hand, but yes, we do, and I'll be able to provide that.
Yeah, it would be interesting to see the relation between school leavers and young people.
Yeah, will do.
Fantastic, thank you. I don't see any other hands on this paper. I think the most exciting thing about this paper is the bit that's not in it, which is that we have now got the 4.89 million, which is going to be a huge increase in this project. it is a big vote of confidence in what's been done so far, actually, by DFE in us. So that's really excellent. And I think, therefore, I mean, I imagine we will have a significant update on this at our next meeting, which I hope will contain, I don't know whether it will have feedback from Ofsted. It would be really nice if it does, and if it can have that information on who has completed the courses so far, that would also be really good. But this is obviously going to be also a very significant increase in the programme, not only in the amount of money available and the number of people involved, but also in the range of courses available. So I'm looking forward very much to hearing about who's going to be providing those and where and how that training is going to happen. But I do think that this is a really exciting part of our programme, so thank you, Fliss. I don't think there are any further comments on it from other people, and I think this is just for noting, is that right? So I think it has been duly noted, and we will move on to the Health and Care Sector Work Academy, which I think it says it's you again, Fliss, but I imagine this is also Pam.
That is correct. And Pat and I haven't rehearsed this, have we, Pat? So I will just give a very brief overview, and then I'm going to hand over to you, if that's okay with you. So you will recall from the last Skills Committee, it was requested that we came back to you with further details on how we intend to spend the underspend for the Health and Care Sector Work Academy. We have 12 months now to spend the remaining monies, and it's really to talk about the work which has been happening. Councillor Every and Councillor Ayres have said today that they have joined the steering group to therefore take forward and oversee the work of the Health and Care Sector Work Academy. And I have to say I am assured by the work that Pat is leading on with City College that there are significant plans underway to bring in a number of additional providers to therefore meet on the needs and the requirements of this contract. So, Pat, rather than me take anything further from you, I'm going to hand over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Fliss. And can I say thank you as well for inviting me to the meeting to go through this. It really is a great opportunity for me to share with you what's happened to date, and also the plans for ensuring that we maximise this contract to the benefit of our local residents moving forward. So sort of to give a little bit of context pre-COVID, the Health and Care Sector Work Academy was delivering a strong performance in the out-of-sector delivery. And the out-of-sector delivery is working with people that are unemployed or in low-wage jobs with no promotional prospects. And we've had a lot of interest pre-COVID, actually, at a senior national level in the progress that had been made to date, and it included us going to the Department for Work and Pensions and presenting to the Director General on the progress of this particular innovation pilot. It really was sort of putting the area on the map, to the extent that following the presentation we were asked if we could host a visit of senior directors, which we did. So really good conversations about how this could be used to drive the skills gap within the sector and what we've learned so far. We had an interim report produced by Hatchery Generis, which again was showing some really positive progress and some suggestions for improvements on the programme. And we also had interest from academics. So Dr. Sissons, who is a leading academic in sector-based work, has taken a lot of interest in this and taken the journey with us as he moved from Coventry University to Warwick University. So we were feeling really positive about it, but we did have some challenges. And there were two main challenges that we faced. One was the original bid was focused on our level 2 qualifications being apprenticeships based, and when the bid was submitted was before the changes to the apprenticeship model, and when the bid was accepted, apprenticeships were not the best methodology for delivering level 2s as far as care homes were concerned, And the challenges that they were facing was 20% off the job, and because a lot of the care homes were small, was the cost associated with it. And at that time, you couldn't transfer the levy. So we did put in a change request to be able to deliver level 2s as opposed to apprenticeships. Unfortunately, it took the DWP 9 months to sign that off, and so approval was achieved not long before COVID arrived, but we're getting ready to move to the in-work training. The other challenge we had was with subcontracting. We had subcontracted with 2 further education colleges in the area to also deliver this programme with us. And unfortunately, between the 2 colleges, they only delivered 8 learners. So that subcontracting ceased, and we were looking at alternatives as we were hit by COVID. Councillor Ayres also mentioned at the start of the meeting some potential inaccuracies in terms of what information that was shared at a previous meeting around the challenges being not having the employers to work with until Opportunity Peterborough and GrowthWorks engaged with us. That's not strictly true. The City College has worked with a number of employers and still does. Still does, as did the FE colleges that we were subcontracting with. We haven't actually progressed any work with OP or Groundworks at this stage. So the project was going well. We were getting ready to move into the level 2s, and then unfortunately we were hit by COVID, and I don't need to revisit the challenges around that. We did continue with some online learning for the students, but the levels that we would have achieved had we been continuing under normal circumstances. That, alongside obviously the health and care sector, had other things to worry about at that time. Since we've come out of sort of the lockdown and COVID, and as care homes have started to get a little bit back to normal, we are in a position now where we can pick up that work again. We're also in the position where we can do face-to-face recruitment in the DWP offices. So that was a no-no up until recently, and face-to-face recruitment for this, particularly coming on being based in the job centres, it gives us a much better impact when we're talking to potential students. So in March, we've got 10 sessions booked to progress the out-of-sector work. We've also recruited a marketing specialist to work with us on this, as well as a senior manager who is very experienced of working in this space on an interim basis. So Richard has joined us. He's got a lot of contacts in the sector. He's worked and delivered sector-based training before and is very experienced in the apprenticeship field. So we've got a strong team now backing up the way that we need to progress, but the big thing for us now is to look at that subcontracting. So we have had these discussions with the steering groups, which Councillor Ayres and Councillor Every both sit on, and with the help of FIS, we've identified in a group of independent training providers who would potentially be suitable to subcontract to. We've gone through a process of looking at the quality of those providers, so we have only selected independent training providers with good outstanding Ofsted grades and who also already work in this space, so they already work in the health and care sector. We've now narrowed that down to 5 independent training providers that we would wish to subcontract to. We met with the steering group earlier this week and gained permission to move that forward. And we're now in the depths of really scrutinising the due diligence. The 5 providers are all very keen to work with us, all very experienced, and the levels that they're initially talking about being able to deliver with the capacity and the contacts that they have within the area would take us over the targets that's set. So the due diligence, all of the returns and the review of those will be completed by next Wednesday. From that, then, we can produce a profile that shows a month-by-month recruitment target for both our own delivery within Peterborough and Cambridgeshire, but also the subcontracted work with the associated costs and spend with that. So that will give us a profile over the next 12 months that we can then monitor very robustly to ensure that we are delivering a programme that's right for our local residents, for our employers, that will meet, if not exceed, the targets that we have set, ensuring that we maximise the funding for the most impact that we could have. And like Fliss, having taken on board this intensive piece of work and really restructuring the team in order to deliver this, and working with some very well-known and established providers in the area for health and social care, I'm really confident that we are going to deliver this contract. But performance management will be key, and so there are sort of 4 aspects in which we will look to monitor and manage the performance. 2 within City College itself through the regular senior leadership team meetings that happen weekly, and the targets and progress will be reviewed weekly by the senior leadership team, but also reported on in the college governing board meetings. More importantly, it will be reported on monthly, and we will be accountable to the Health and Care Sector Work Academy Steering Group, which Councillor Ayres and Councillor Every are on. And then, of course, there's this committee itself, which we will also be accountable to. So those are the plans that we currently have, and welcome any questions.
Thank you very much, Pat, for that very thorough introduction or summary. I don't see any questions. I'm sure there will be, but I was going to say I think you've probably answered most of them in the introduction, Liz.
Thank you, Chair. If I may just say, sort of sitting on the steering group, and we did have a meeting this week, and I'd like to echo what Fliss said about being more reassured about that we were going to meet the targets that we have. I think within our own districts we've got some work to do to assist you in spreading the word, and I'm really looking forward to working on what we can do in East Cams. And I think, as I said at the last meeting, this is a no-brainer. This has got to work because we have no plan B. This is absolutely vital that we get this to work. But I was very reassured by the meeting that we had this week, so I wanted to say thank you, Pat.
Thank you, Councillor Avery.
Thank you, John.
This is definitely how I have to bow to the greater knowledge of other people in this one. First of all, very, very good and clear messaging coming across there. The only one, and again, this is possibly, no, I know it's ignorance, but it's on 4.5, and it says targeting of non-registered care services. I always worry when we're targeting non-registered care services. That probably I should have no worry at all, but I am just ignorant on what is a non-registered care service provider. I suppose that's a question of, are we happy with that?
Pat, are you able to explain that section?
Sort of, if I'm honest. So I'm reassured by my team, who are the specialists in health and social care, that we have care providers that don't have to register, they don't meet the threshold for registration. And by us targeting and working with them, part of what we would do would be to encourage them to become registered providers. So we will look at that, how successful we will be. We will need to report back on that. But I'm assured by my team that actually it's a way of ensuring that we have quality within those providers. But I'm happy to come back with more detail if that's helpful.
Thank you. I think that is helpful. I don't see any further hands, and I know that this is something that the steering group are going to be keeping a very close eye on, so I think our thanks as a committee go to them and to you, and as Liz says, we absolutely wish you luck with getting these numbers in, because this is a really important programme, not only for us as a committee in delivering on our programme, but also for the whole of the care sector. We really need this to work. We'll be looking forward to further updates from the steering committee and from you, but thank you, Pat.
Thank you.
Lovely. Okay, so I think that one was also just for noting, so it has been noted, and we will move on to, now this is where there's a danger that I missed something, the budget and performance report with Vanessa, I think is next. I hope I'm right. So Vanessa, are you there?
I am, Chair. Thank you very much. Good morning, Chair. Good morning, members. This paper is my normal month Skills Committee financial reports too, and is purely for noting, as previously, as we always do. If I start through with the revenue income situation, I just have a slight update to give you on the figures that are in the document. The midlife MOT figures funding has now been received, so there's no danger of that not being received this financial year. And just for clarification, the careers and enterprise funding comes in quarterly in arrears. We're expecting a payment any day now, and the final amount will be accrued. So again, the figures that we have forecast for income to come in for the financial year will definitely be met. If I move on to the revenue expenditure items, we are currently showing a reduction in expected costs for the year of £2.398 thousand. The breakdown for that is the vast underspend on that is for the AEB area, which has already been discussed at length with Parminder in his previous paper, and we have discussed over previous committee meetings. With the changes that we are now working with bringing in-year growth cases, adding providers, etc., we are seeing a movement forward in these numbers, but it's not going to impact on this financial year, which is what I wanted to sort of underline to yourselves. Moving through from that, the CEC budget line began the Careers Hub delivery in September, and due to some delays with legal documentation, there hasn't been the option for the growth code to invoice the CPCA for these yet. This will be happening in the next 2 weeks, so that again the expenditure will be increased and will come very, very close to budget. Digital Skills Boost Bootcamp, again, this has just been discussed at this meeting, so you are aware of the differences with the expenditure and the income, etc. And I don't really feel it's necessary for me to sort of highlight more on that one. Health and Social Care Work Academy, again, this item has just been discussed, and I do believe you've got plenty of information from previous members that the discussion that was had. And finally, the last area to talk about is the Skills Advisory Panel funding, and most of this income has been spent or committed, with a small amount that's just been finalised. And it's likely that small amount will be rolled over into the next financial year, so that it will be linked with academic spend. The last section to produce to you is the performance reporting. You will note that there's a slight amendment in 4.4 as the combined authority as a whole are looking at performance reporting and how they are working towards meeting the business plan and sustainable growth ambition. So performance metrics are currently being reviewed. So it is likely that this document that's attached this time around will change in for future meetings, and it's more to give you that information. And that's the conclusion of my report, Chair. Over to you for any questions.
Thank you very much, Vanessa. Do I have any questions on this report? Lynn, then John.
Thank you. I should have asked this before, but the Workers' Education Institute, I hadn't heard of. Can somebody tell me where it is, please, and what it does? I've got just another query over on page on 3.4 that was just spoken of, which is about this CEC budget line began the Careers Hub, and then there's talk of delays on legal contracts. And I just wondered why, how long was the delay, and whether that was going to affect things very much. And then I did have one on this document as well, but I can probably do that later.
If I can start, the Workers' Education Association is, I believe they're Cambridgeshire based. They have been subcontracting for other colleges, but we have now, they will still continue that work, but they will be now directly employed by the CPCA to deliver services on our behalf. I hope I've got that right, but if I've got it wrong, then maybe Parminder could jump in on that one.
Yeah, just to for those of you who don't know the WEA, they are a national adult education and learning institute. They're the largest voluntary sector provider of adult learning across the country. Previously, they delivered prior to devolution in our region, but unfortunately they didn't get through the procurement process at the time. We've subsequently reviewed that, and in line with the other combined authorities and also in line with the Education and Skills Funding Agency. Their legal designation is not an independent training provider, but a specialist designated institute. And what that means is that we can grant fund them as everybody else does and not treat them as an independent training provider. And so they have a footprint in both the north and the south, but mainly concentrated in the south of the sub-region. And they will be providing additional provision at level 2 and below, particularly focusing on supporting people furthest from the labour market to access education and progress.
And I mentioned about the delays.
So I can come in there. So and Vanessa, please jump in after me. It's just to give you assurance there's been no delay in delivery at all. This is I guess a back office way of how we manage the relationship, which is quite complex, between the Business Growth Service, Growth Co and the Combined Authority. So delivery has continued at full pelt across the whole of the contract.
That's what I wanted to make sure of. Yeah. No delay in delivery.
And if I can just reassure you on that, the CEC side has been delivering, and we have been receiving funding from the CEC directly into the CPCA. We just have not been passing that funding through to Growth Co because of those internal contractual issues, should we say.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. That's really helpful. John.
Thank you, Chair. That's actually covered a couple of bits and learns, so I won't do that one. I think it's just an item we just need to keep an eye on, isn't it? That we've been explained today why there have been some delays in some of those areas, and I think there is a little bit of concern there, but I think the explanations have been good. On the Skills Committee perspective, on the baseline ones, I have a bit of a problem with the GVA trajectory baseline. I think again, just to keep an eye on it with the skills project profiling. But thank you very much for keeping us up to speed with all the budgetary bits.
Thank you. I don't see...
I've just got another question on this. I think this is part of this particular item, isn't it? This dashboard.
Yep.
Yep. Yeah, just something I didn't understand, and that's on the skills project. This is probably just me not understanding what it's saying. But I noticed that the University of Peterborough phase 1, 2 and 3 is said to be red and amber, and others are green and amber, and I didn't know how you identified that and what it meant.
That's something that comes from the project management team. They have just changed sort of how they're trying to look at it. This is part of the new development around there, the park committee, etc. I think they highlight them really for example, phase 1 and phase 2 of the university, just because there have been some issues around the contingency and the financials. That's why they've put that in there. Obviously, phase 1 is still steaming full pelt ahead with delivery. It's still due for project completion in July, for handover opening in September. Phase 2 again is really around the financials of the internal fit out, should we say, and again that building is going ahead with ready for project build completion in sort of December. And phase 3 has on Thursday was just agreed with the final legals to have that sign off between CPCA, PCC and ARU. So we've finally got to that stage. So the way that they rag rate these now, I'm not 100% certain because they're just changing it all. But there is nothing to particularly worry about those 3 projects. I really would like to highlight that one.
Thank you for that. I only had the worry that there was a worry.
No. I do actually present.
If there isn't, I can be quiet. Thank you.
No, I present to both of the Propco 1 and the Propco 2 boards and look after the finances for those, and I can assure you that there is nothing for the Skills Committee to be unduly concerned about at this moment in time. No.
Thank you. I've got one very general question on this, which is that so far during my time chairing this committee, we've mostly been worried about underspends for kind of understandable reasons to do with COVID. I am really, really hoping that in the coming year, we will not be having that same problem, and that we may end up with some different problems, which is some courses and some things overperforming, and that we may end up potentially looking at having more demand for things, for some things, and less demand for other things. So my question really is that when we stop having red brackets round everything, which I really hope we will, is there flexibility in our budget to move things around so that we can support some areas which are doing really well, if we do find that some things are particularly popular and we want to do more of it?
Within the AEB WIPIT section, we can, because obviously it depends on how the funding comes through. So, for example, all the AEB projects, because we have that underspend and that reserve fund where everything sits within, we can move things around, and that's part of the funding flexibilities that Parliament has been bringing forward to you. The other areas, it depends on the funding source and what availability we have within within the grant funding agreements and the conditions of grant that we've been given, and whether it is funding from the gain share from the CPCA. We do have the potential to sort of do environments and move things around, but obviously that will be in discussion with officers and with yourselves, and then obviously moving up to the CA board for that to happen. So, for example, if we just pick, I'm trying to find one that's a gain share fund, the Skills Rapid Response Fund. If that was underperforming because it's a gain share option, it would be within the CPCA's remit to do that, provided it had gone through all the proper channels. If an AEB project was underperforming, we couldn't move that to another area. So we would have to look at that as we move forward, Councillor Nessinger.
Thank you, that's really helpful. And I imagine that one of the quite good things about the very large grant that we've got for the boot camps is that we can at least move stuff around within that package. Even if we can't move it out to something else completely, we can shift things around within the 4.89 million that we've got to provide more of things that are popular.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, that's helpful. I don't see any further hands on this one, in which case I think this is also for noting, so I think we have noted it, and that's excellent. And finally we move to the summary of the Employment and Skills Board meeting, which is Fliss. Thank you, Vanessa.
Thank you. This is a very, very short paper, and we'll have a very short introduction as well. So this paper, I would say the last meeting, but we have had an additional meeting since, but paper deadlines mean that this is reporting on the Employment Skills Board on the 14th of December, which now feels like a very long time ago. And everything that we've discussed, the majority has come to this committee. So one was the local skills report. That was a requirement that had to be published by the end of January, so that's taken place, and the local skills report had the endorsement of the ESB. In addition, we also received some findings on an apprenticeship survey, which we undertook with Cambridge Ahead and Cambridgeshire Insight, provide the analysis on that. We did open that survey up again, actually, to try and get more responses. During National Apprenticeship Week, we concluded that survey, and I can share the findings from that analysis, which I think the Skills Committee would find useful. I think we managed about over 70 responses, so useful findings about the use of levy, and also which employers and how they're utilising their levy going forward. So we will share the findings with the committee. And in addition, then this is how long ago it was, we were looking at the draft of the Employment and Skills Strategy, and again the ESB endorsed the strategy to be taken forward. One thing to note is we have lost a number of members through retirements and people changing jobs, and so we are currently looking for additional members of the Employment and Skills Board. The majority of the members are either employers, providers, and also representative groups. So if you have any suggestions of who you think it would be useful to join that group, they are an advisory committee. Please forward them on to me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Fliss. Any comments on that paper, which, as you say, is quite brief? Okay, thank you. That is indeed noted. And then I think our final thing is the agenda plan. No changes on the agenda. Well, presumably there will actually be one change on the agenda plan, which is new work on the skills bootcamps, which will be exciting. but other than that, nothing to add. Any comments on the agenda plan?
There is a point to note. So the University for Peterborough programme business case will be delayed. We will be in Purda at this point, and so therefore we have moved that to July.
Lovely. Eileen.
Thank you. It's just to come back to my earlier point that we did originally have the green jobs on here, and it seems to have dropped off. And will it be reappearing sometime soon? I understand that you've been the procurement and everything. So, is there a sort of timescale for any of that?
So it is due to come under. It's actually on the 4th of July, which will come under the Employment and Skills Strategy Delivery Plan.
Okay.
If that needs to be brought forward, we can do. However, with paper deadlines, I think we'll struggle to bring it prior to then. Apologies.
It was just out of curiosity, really. Thank you.
Lovely. In which case, I think that's the end of the meeting. Thank you all very much indeed for attending. It was very nice to see you all, and see you soon. Eileen, you've got one more meeting with us, I think. Is that? Yes.